back to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into the source material on Charles Manson. It's a name everyone knows, usually linked to pure darkness in American culture.
Yeah, and we're trying to go beyond just the horrible violence of 69. We want to look at the whole trajectory, the decades inside institutions, the really weird influences, and just the whole cultural situation that let this guy, basically a career criminal, suddenly become this infamous cult figure.
Right. Our goal here is to piece together how someone who was, frankly, a failure by any normal standard, especially within the legal system, could suddenly gain such terrifying influence right after getting out.
Exactly. We're tracing his documented path. And just to give you a sense of how broken things were for him personally, by the time Manson hit 32, he'd already spent more than half his life locked up.
More than half his life.
Yeah, and he was so institutionalized that when he was finally up for release in 1967, he actually asked if he could stay in prison, told them it had basically become his home.
Wow. I mean, it's genuinely hard to wrap my head around that. Prison is the place you want to be.
It really speaks to the chaos that was his early life right from the start. Born Charles Mills Maddox, 1934. His mother was only 16, never knew his biological dad. Just deep instability from day one.
And the trouble started early, didn't it? The sources talk about truancy, petty theft. There's even that claim he set his school on fire when he was just 9.
Yeah, that story persists. And by 13, he's already in the juvenile system. Places like the Gabalt School for Boys, which was known for being incredibly strict.
And that's where he started learning to, well, survive in that environment.
Pretty much. While he was institutionalized, he came up with this thing he called the insane game. He'd basically act completely unhinged, screeching, making faces, convulsing to scare off anyone stronger who might target him.
So a manipulation tactic learned very young.
Exactly. The defense mechanism honed over years inside, something he'd definitely use later on the outside.
But here's something interesting from the sources about his intelligence. They did aptitude tests at the National Training School for Boys in D.C., found he was basically illiterate.
Right. Functionally illiterate.
But his IQ tested at 109, which is actually above average.
Yeah, it points to this disconnect, right? Potential there, maybe, but completely unapplied or misapplied, and a huge red flag, you'd think, for the institutions that just kept cycling him through.
And the nature of his crimes back then is important too. Mostly theft, right? Stealing cars, crossing state lines, forged checks, that sort of thing.
Correct. And crucially, these were often federal offenses. The sources really stress this federal time was way harsher than state time for similar stuff. That's why he stacked up so much prison time before any of the really violent stuff happened.
There were those brief attempts at a normal life, though, outside prison walls. The outline mentions 2 early marriages. Rosalie Willis, Leona Stevens.
Yeah, very brief attempts. He had 3 known kids from those times, too. But none of it stuck. The pull back to the institution, or maybe just his own instability, was too strong.
But prison wasn't just wasted time, in a weird way. During that second big stretch at McNeil Island, he started picking up things for his next act.
Uh-huh. He got guitar lessons from Alvin Creepy Karpis, the Barker Karpis gang leader.
Wow, really? Creepy carcass.
Yep. And he also managed to get a contact in the music business, a producer named Phil Kaufman. So the seeds for that whole music guru thing were actually planted right there in prison.
Okay, so that brings us to 1967. He asks to stay. I say no. He's out. And he makes a beeline for San Francisco.
Right into the heart of the Summer of Love. And he connects with this really crucial figure, Roger Smith. Smith was a federal probation officer, but he was also doing doctoral research in criminology.
And where was Smith doing this research?
At the Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic. And this is where, the context gets really, really important, maybe even disturbing.
How so?
Manson started hanging out at the clinic, and the sources indicate that the HAFMC was getting funding, apparently, from the NIH, and, some sources even say the CIA.
Wait, the CIA? Funding a free clinic?
To study the effects of drugs like LSD on the counterculture people flooding into Haight-Ashbury.
So, Manson and his early followers weren't just part of the scene. They were essentially like subjects in government-funded research on psychedelics.
That seems to be what the sources suggest. It puts a whole different spin on it, doesn't it? The environment wasn't just counterculture. It might have been a kind of, experimental zone.
That's wild. And Manson arrives there already armed with this jumbled philosophy you'd picked up.
Totally. A real mashup. You've got 150 hours of Scientology auditing he did in prison.
Seriously. Scientology.
Yep. Plus Dale Carnegie's self-help stuff, his own interpretations of the Bible, and Robert Heinlein's sci-fi novel Stranger in a Strange Land was apparently a big one for him.
Okay, so you take that mix, throw in heavy, frequent LSD use, potentially, as part of this research environment.
And the change was dramatic. One of the researchers, David Smith, quoting Roger Smith, said the shift in Manson's personality after release and exposure to LSD was the most abrupt he'd ever seen professionally.
And he started using those old manipulation skills, the insane game, but maybe refined.
Yeah, trying to actively reprogram people, using LSD, using sex, using all the control tactics he'd learned over a lifetime of institutionalization.
And he found willing followers pretty quickly, mostly young women, right? Became the Manson family.
Exactly. Vulnerable people drawn to this guru figure. And then came the connection to the Hollywood scene, which was all about the music.
The Beach Boys connection. Dennis Wilson picks up a couple of the family women hitchhiking.
And next thing you know, Manson and a whole bunch of his followers are living at Dennis Wilson's house on Sunset Boulevard for like 6 months.
Which must have felt like he'd finally made it, or was about to.
For sure. He's right there. The Beach Boys even record one of his songs, Cease to Exist. Though, significantly, they changed the name to Never Learn Not to Love and only credited Dennis Wilson.
Ouch, that couldn't have gone over well.
No, Manson was apparently furious, and then his bigger music dream got crushed when Terry Melcher, the producer Wilson introduced him to, decided not to give him a record deal.
And the reaction wasn't just disappointment, it was darker.
Oh, yeah. Rejection turned straight to menace. He reportedly left a single bullet with Wilson's housekeeper, along with a threatening message. The guy who learned to survive inside was now responding to professional setbacks with, well, implied violence.
That failure, that rejection, it seems like a turning point.
It definitely coincided with a shift towards isolation. In August '68, the family moves out to Spahn Ranch, this old rundown movie set way out of the way.
And the setup there was pretty grim, wasn't it?
Yeah, really dark. The deal was the women would do chores and provide sexual favors for the owner, George Spahn, who was nearly blind and about 80 years old, just to live there for free. Total isolation, total dependence on Manson.
And it's in that isolated, pressured environment that the helter-skelter idea really takes hold.
Right. This became the prosecution's main argument for motive. Manson's completely bizarre take on the Beatles' White Album.
He thought it was predicting what exactly?
An imminent apocalyptic race war. He believed black people would rise up and kill almost all the white people, but then they wouldn't know how to run things.
So the family would. What? Hide out.
Hide out in the desert during the chaos, then emerge afterward to rule over the surviving black population, who they'd see as needing masters. It's just this terrifying, racist fantasy spun out of pop music.
And the violence started escalating before the really infamous murders. July 1st, '69, the Bernard Crowe shooting.
Right. Manson shot Crowe, a drug dealer, apparently thinking he was a Black Panther. That incident sparked real paranoia and Manson's fear of retaliation. Spahn Ranch basically became an armed camp after that.
Then, later that same month, the Gary Hinman murder.
Yeah, Hinman was a music teacher. Manson thought he had money they could take, sent some family members over. Manson himself showed up later, supposedly slashed Hinman's face or ear with a sword. Bobby Bosley ended up killing him.
And they left messages in blood there too, right?
They did. Political piggy and a panther paw print. A clear attempt to frame the Black Panthers and misdirect, setting the stage for what came next.
Which brings us to those 2 nights in August '69. August 8th, CeeLo Drive. Tex Watson, Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, Linda Kasabian.
The sheer horror of it. The
Yeah.
sources detail Sharon Tate, 8.5 months pregnant, pleading for her baby's life, stabbed 16 times. And the word pig written in her blood on the door. Just brutal.
And the very next night, the LaBiancas. Manson went along this time, at least initially.
Yeah, he went inside, helped tie up Lino and Rosemary LaBianca. Then he left, telling the others to commit the murders, apparently instructing them to be even more gruesome than the night before.
And they were. The details are stomach-churning. War carved into Lino LaBianca's body, a forklift sticking out of him.
And more messages in blood. Helter-skelter, misspelled rise, death to pigs. All over the walls of the refrigerator. Designed to incite terror and confusion.
Now, the official motive pushed by the prosecution was helter-skelter trying to kickstart this race war he prophesied.
That was Bugliosi's narrative, yes.
But the sources mentioned an alternative theory, one the defense considered. Less about the apocalypse, more about something immediate.
Exactly. The defense theory, or at least one explored, was that the LaBianca murders, with their specific bloody messages, were actually copycat crimes.
Copycatting what?
Copycatting the Hinman murder where Beausoleil had already been arrested. The idea was if these new murders looked similar, police might think they had the wrong guy for Hinman, potentially getting Beausoleil off the hook.
So it could have been about protecting one of their own, mixed in with the grander, crazier, helter-skelter stuff.
It shows how his immediate needs control, protecting his followers, could easily intertwine with these larger cultic delusions.
And it's chilling to think the official count might not be the full story. LAPD suspected more victims, right?
Yeah, they thought the family might be responsible for up to a dozen more murders. Cases like Marina Elizabeth Habe, stabbed back in '68, still unsolved, and the disappearance of Ronald Hughes.
Leslie Van Houten's lawyer.
Right. He vanished during a break in the trial, right after Manson allegedly warned him not to return to the courtroom. His body was found months later. Very suspicious circumstances.
The trial itself was just a circus, driven by Manson importing his prison behavior into the courtroom.
Totally. He carves that X into his forehead, says he's Xing himself out of the establishment's world, and immediately the female defendants copy him. Pure theater, but also deeply menacing.
To the point where the judge supposedly started carrying a gun.
That's the story. Judge Older reportedly wore a revolver under his robes after Manson lunged at him or made a significant threat in court.
They all got the death penalty initially.
They did, but then California ruled the state death penalty unconstitutional in '72, so all their sentences were commuted to life.
And he spent the rest of his life in prison. Denied parole, what, 12 times?
12 times. The reasons were always the same. No remorse, still trying to control people, significant diagnosed mental health issues, schizophrenia, psychopathy were mentioned.
And the infamy just kept going, even from behind bars. 1975, Squeaky Freeform tries to shoot President Ford.
Lynette Squeaky from? Yeah, apparently trying to get attention for Manson, maybe earn his approval or get sent to the same prison somehow. Just bizarre loyalty.
His prison life wasn't quiet either. He got set on fire by another inmate.
Yeah, in 1984, apparently the guy was upset about Manson's Hare Krishna chanting, if you can believe it, threw paint thinner on him and lit it. Manson survived, obviously, but with serious burns.
The weird details just never stop. Later in life, that X on his forehead became a swastika.
A deliberate provocation, embracing the ultimate symbol of evil for many.
And then there was that engagement in 2014 to a 26-year-old woman called Star.
Afton Burton. Yeah, that was strange. The wedding got called off, supposedly because Manson found out her real plan was to marry him so she could get control of his body after he died.
To do what with it?
Apparently, to put it on display, like a tourist attraction. Even Manson drew the line there, it seems.
Unbelievable. And the cultural impact. It even touched Star Wars.
Kind of indirectly, yeah. George Lucas originally named his hero Luke Starkiller. But around the time the film was being finalized, the Manson trial publicity was still pretty heavy. The idea of celebrity killers was in the air. So partly to avoid any negative association, however faint, the name was changed to Skywalker.
Wow. So when you step back and look at everything, the decades of institutional failure, the literacy versus IQ thing, the drug research context in Haight-Ashbury, the Hollywood rejection, it's like a perfect storm.
It really is. A confluence of factors took this deeply disturbed career criminal and amplified his ability to manipulate. The skills were learned over a lifetime of antisocial behavior, but the specific environment of '67, the drugs, the cultural upheaval, it all just poured gasoline on the fire.
A man who said prison was his home, yet caused so much destruction outside it.
Exactly. The ultimate paradox, perhaps.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener. Why does this figure someone so disconnected institutionally for so long? Someone whose core ideology was this nonsensical race war based on a Beatles album. Why does he still cast such a long, dark shadow over culture? Music, movies, even Star Wars had to adjust course slightly because of his notoriety. What is it about the sheer bizarre horror of his life that keeps the myth alive? Something to think about.